I had my appendix burst on the operating room table. It nearly killed me if I wasn't going in for surgery for that. I think I was deficient in cholesterol, which is backwards from everything I've ever been told. Once I got that cholesterol in, my hormones balanced. My testosterone went up. My sleep improved. All of these things are related to our hormones. When I was so depressed, I was completely hopeless. Only by the grace of God, I'm still here right now.
Bonus warriors. On March 3rd, I found the video that was called Carnivore Reacts Bill Gates, M&M's Healthier versus Meat. And I watched this video and I was shocked. First of all, the information in it, but I love the presenter. And of course, that meant that I did 3 videos of his right away on March 3rd. And then the following day, I did another 3 and found out that Kerry not only was saving a movie theater, but doing a documentary about how eating healthy can basically heal so many things, especially mental health. So, I was right on board with that one. And that's who we're talking to today. I'm so excited to get, first of all, Kerry, can you explain to us how you even became on this journey? Because I'll tell you that it was a month of me watching you, every video that you put out. And then eventually, like, you just become part of the videos that show up in my feed and I watch all the time. I'd love to know your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Violet. I appreciate it. My story, I was suffering for a very long time, most of my adult life. And the main issue I had was mental health, depression, and anxiety. I was on every medication for depression, led to insomnia and anxiety and all sorts of downstream issues. But beyond that, at my heaviest, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today. I had IBS. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I had a CPAP machine I was using for years that I absolutely despised. I had arthritis in my back and in my elbows, and I had arthritis in my foot so bad. They said it was gout, but it hurt so bad I could barely put any pressure down on my foot. All of these things just kept cascading together. I also had 2 kidney stones. That was some of the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life. I had my appendix burst on the operating room table. It nearly killed me if I wasn't going in for surgery for that. And so I've had all sorts of stomach issues, weight issues, and mental health issues most of my life. And I found the keto diet many, many years ago through a documentary on Netflix called Fathead. And it was kind of an obscure documentary. I think the guy was like a stand-up comedian. He's like, I'm just going to do a documentary because I'm so fired up about the ketogenic diet. And so I tried it, and it was the only thing in my entire life that ever touched my depression and helped with my depression just a little bit. It didn't cure my depression. It didn't reverse it. And unfortunately, it helped a lot, but I wasn't able to maintain keto and overcome my depression. I was still taking the medication. But yeah, kind of long story short, because I tend to ramble, I found the carnivore diet a little over 500 days ago through a YouTube video through a man named Dante Ferrigno from Ferrigno Freedom. And he was talking about, I'm going to eat only meat for like 30 days or 90 days. And I saw that, and I saw a lot of his issues were similar to mine. He was overweight, depression, anxiety, stomach issues. But I was like, there's no way you can only eat meat. You're insane. This is crazy. On the flip side, I knew about ketosis, like I mentioned earlier. So I knew the science behind it. I'm like, technically that's going to work. It should help. But you can't maintain that. You're going to clog your arteries. You're going to have a heart attack. You're going to get bored. And then I realized that his video was 2 years old that I was watching that said he was going to eat only meat. So I was with my wife and we were kind of cynical. I said, let's watch his most recent video now. There's no way this guy's still eating meat. We fast forwarded. We looked at his most current video and you couldn't recognize Dante. Completely transformed individual, lost all his weight, just his face, his mood, his demeanor. You could just tell he was full of energy and he was excited. So I decided then I needed to investigate carnivore diet a little bit more. And then I watched about 1,000 Dr. Berry videos, and eventually I decided to start carnivore. And yeah, it changed my life forever from there.
So did you say that you therefore started keto for mental health?
Yeah, well, amongst other things, but that was one of the main reasons, because I was just so depressed and anxious most of my life. That's my main reason for continuing to do carnivore to this day, is for mental health reasons. I think it's one of the most powerful tools, ketogenic diet, strict ketogenic diet. I've interviewed so many individuals on my YouTube channel, and for the documentary. And that's a common theme with every single one of them. I did carnivore or I did keto for this, but it improved my mental health more than I ever would have imagined.
I do think that everybody who starts a keto carnivore lifestyle eventually sees, even myself, and I didn't have like any kind of psychiatric issue, but just the lifting of fog and the energy that you get. And it's kind of crazy that we don't realize that we're not living to the way that we could.
I love the way you use the word fog. I've said this on my channel. People are going to start rolling their eyes because I say it all the time, but I had the brain fog before starting carnivore. I think everyone realizes on the standard American diet or a non ketogenic diet, some level of brain fog, but you can't see the fog while you're in the fog. And people don't realize how much fog there is until you get out of it. That has been one of the most amazing blessings on carnivore, despite all the other like 1,000 things that improved for me. Having no brain fog and just clear cognitive ability, mental ability, it's so much clearer than it ever has been my whole life. I used this analogy before. I think when I was like 14, I got glasses for the first time. And when I went outside, I looked at a tree. I could see every little leaf on the tree. And my whole life up until that point, the tree was just kind of green and blurry. And I thought that's just the way trees look. Like you can't see it till you look through this different lens.
Actually, that's a great analogy. And well, I want to back up a second because so what I'm understanding is when you saw that documentary, the person did speak a little bit about mental health.
He touched on it a little bit. Most of it was kind of like everybody approaches keto or a ketogenic diet is for weight loss. I get so many questions about weight loss. It gets kind of frustrating. I get it, but that's like the entry. So it was mostly about weight loss, but yeah, he did touch on mental health and I think he talked a little bit about clarity and brain fog and things like that. I think also after watching that, I did more research. It inspired me to do more research, which maybe led me more into the mental health part of it.
What I want to know is you start keto. So I want to go back that far. Probably there's a weight component that you're looking at because you said you were overweight, but there's this idea that maybe it helps with both. How quickly did you see results on the mental health side?
I would say about 3 weeks in. And again, I'm not saying like, oh, I was cured or anything, but I had this moment where it was like, whoa, something feels different here that I often show these. All of these pills, I was on so many pills. A lot of these were for depression, anxiety. I had a whoa moment doing keto where my brain, my mood, it started lifting and feeling significantly different than I've ever noticed before on the ketogenic diet. And I would say that was about 3 weeks into it. I always tell people though, it's different for everybody. I get this question a lot because I've interviewed so many people doing carnivore keto, but a lot of people I've talked to have said that 3 weeks to a month, they notice something, not that their depression has reversed, but they notice something significant. And that was the case for me.
I love that answer because you started for mental health. A lot of people start for weight, but whether it's mental health or pain, we get results before the weight comes off. And that's the most important, amazing part of the story is that people come in for thinking that they're going to lose weight and they're all excited about that. But the health improvements happen first because that's what our body wants. Our body wants health improvements, and the weight is the least of the problem, even though it's the reason most people start.
Yes. Yeah. On that front. So when I started actually doing carnivore, after I watched about 1,000 Dr. Berry videos, and I finally convinced myself I'm going to try this, uh, so many health things improved for me before I lost any weight. So almost immediately doing carnivore diet, I stopped snoring. And that's life changing for me. I was on a CPAP machine. I had insomnia. I had moments where I had sleep paralysis, which was just terrifying. I had all sorts of sleep issues. But my sleep doctor that prescribed the CPAP machine to me, he said, listen, you're like at that point, you're about 80 pounds overweight. You got to lose this weight. Your neck is really fat and big. And, that's why you're snoring. So I always thought it was the weight. I stopped snoring before I lost a pound. And Dr. Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, he said he stopped snoring the first week on carnivore diet. And subsequently, I've heard so many other people say the same thing. That's a game changer right there because when you improve your sleep, your hormones start to balance, your immune system gets stronger. There's so many downstream effects from improving the sleep. But yeah, to your point, I didn't lose a pound before. It wasn't the weight that caused me to snore. It was just inflammation that whole time. And then I had like oh my goodness, my back doesn't hurt anymore. My back has hurt since high school. I thought I injured my back, and I was like, my entire life, I'm going to have this injury. It's never going away. I've had it for like 20 years now. Went away within like 2 weeks. It wasn't weight loss because I was still very heavy 2 weeks after starting carnivore, but that inflammation goes away so quickly. So, yeah, I always tell people I would take my 100 pounds back in a second if it meant I could keep all of these other things that have improved on carnivore, mainly the mental health.
I say that all the time too. It's like I was the queen of excuses. Oh, it's the sports I do. It's this or that. Like I'm doing sports once every 2 weeks, but somehow that's causing all my body pains. It's crazy how we just, well, it's not crazy. We tell ourselves stories that match what we're living and we just naturally do it. And it makes the world make sense. And so you were doing keto for how long before it sounds to me like you fell off at some point.
I fell, yes, I fell off and on keto. I wish I could track like how much weight I've lost over my whole life when you account for yo-yo dieting, losing and gaining, because I think I would have the world record. I yo-yoed like crazy. So I did keto very well, started helping with my mental health. I lost a bunch of weight. My wife and I have a picture that we took together at Yellowstone, and we were both down more than I've ever been down in terms of weight. Not this much as I am now, but back then. And I remember when we took that picture saying, I will never gain this weight back again. It was so hard to get here. Like doing keto was one of the easier ways to do it, but I still struggled because I would always try to moderate. Um, Anyways, it was a couple months later, I had gained all of that weight back and then more. And from that point until now, I don't know, like 10, 15 years doing keto, I yo-yo dieted. I would do keto really strong. I'd lose some weight. And then I would say, okay, now I can go back to moderation, which is one of the words I absolutely despise. I hate that word. Just eat a balanced diet, go back to moderation. And that's what I would do. And then I would gain all of the weight back. I have subsequently realized on carnivore, I was an addict. I'm addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to the standard American diet. I'm not ashamed to say it or talk about it. This food is engineered to be highly addictive. There's people that's all they do is their jobs is to make this food more and more addictive. And I cannot moderate an addiction. And that was my problem on keto. I would do keto, and for me, like I'm kind of extreme, but even if I would have fruit, for example, people are like, "What's wrong with fruit?" It spiked my blood sugar, and like an hour, 2 hours later, I want more sugar. I want something else. Like, and I was hungry throughout the day. And so I kept trying to moderate my addiction to sugar. I would count the carbs. Oh, I'm almost at 20, and I would inevitably fall out, and then I'd end up eating too much. And I'd have a cheat day, and I'd say, let's have a cheat weekend, and then we'll go back to strict keto again on Monday, kind of thing. I did that for years and years. And then those keto products came out, and those were really horrible for me as well. The keto breads and tortillas and snacks and candy, which is all processed junk food that I'm never going to eat again my entire life.
When did you find keto? What year?
I'd say I'm horrible with dates. I would say it was 15 years ago.
By the time I came in, like all the keto channels with all the cookies and cakes and breads and all the things were already well underway. And I feel like that was a stumbling block for me at the beginning as well. So I can understand what you're saying. Like you end up doing well, but then you eat these things that still taste sweet. And of course, you're chasing again, right? Because your addiction is back on.
Yeah, 100%. I get mad now when I go into a big grocery store and I see these keto snacks like keto ice cream and keto bread and stuff like that because people are trying, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, it's keto, it's okay, it's a couple carbs, but then you look at the ingredients and it's like seed oils and fake sugars, and I'd eat a artificial fake sugar. It's like the same thing. My cravings come back. I eat seed oils, my body just gets fully inflamed. I think inflammation is one of the worst things for us. I think most of humanity should be worried about inflammation. They're not. Most of humanity is worried about cholesterol and clogging your arteries by eating meat, things like that. But yeah, those keto snacks messed me up big time. And it was always so unnatural, like counting calories, like, oh, I can mix this in, I can make this keto pizza, I could do this. And it was so unnatural compared to what it's like on carnivore now. I don't even think about things on carnivore.
I think that's one of the tricks about keto foods is that it makes people believe that keto is about a kind of food and it's not about eating properly. And we get pulled into the story where, of course, I can either buy a keto treat, like we can do that in the store right now, Again, when I started, it was more common that you had to make your own. I didn't, at least here in Canada, anyways, we don't have that access as quickly as you guys in the US get it, thank goodness. And when you have to make your own, it does add a bit of time and so a bit of annoyance, which helped me out a lot because I don't like to cook that much. So, like, to have to go and make these things, it was a bit of a deterrent. But again, if you're a person who's highly vulnerable and addicted, which everybody on the planet is, if you're willing to cook the thing, you're going to make the thing and you're going to fall off. And I think what you're telling me is that on some level, either you had access because you could buy it or you were just making it and falling off.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And then I'd have good intentions and I'd go back and I'd count the carbs. I'd be really strict. Can't have more than 20 carbs today. And yeah, I would add a little bit of that stuff in there and I just couldn't moderate it. Or I'd be good. Like I would even say, I'm going to have some low glycemic index fruit. I'm going to have some blueberries or something like that with good intentions. But then hour and a half, 2 hours later, all these cravings would start coming back. And then I'd end up eating more and more. So yeah, I think I gained and lost an incredible amount of weight doing keto over the years.
And for the audience, I'm going to add this piece of information because you're talking about moderating sugar. And for the audience, I think what's missing in that is that even when we do artificial sweeteners, our brain doesn't know the difference. And so therefore, it treats all sweet tasting things, whether it's a blueberry or candy, it treats all sweet tasting things the same and therefore makes some space in us by putting some sugar away for the incoming sugar that doesn't come, which I think explains why we get hungry afterwards. And that little circle that we keep living because we think we can moderate something that our brain is going to do what it's meant to do. And I feel like maybe this helps us understand why you had such a struggle to stay where you wanted to stay, which is healthy and at the weight that you swore you would never go past, which it sounds like you went past.
Yeah, exactly. I look at sugar. I've heard this recently that on an MRI, sugar lights up the brain just like cocaine. And so that's how I view it now for me. I was addicted to cocaine my entire life. I quit it going on the carnivore diet. So I'm not going to moderate and on Saturday have a little bit of cocaine or a little bit of fake cocaine or something that reacts in my body similar to like a hard drug. Uh, for me, like I was so addicted. It's not something I want to mess with at all.
How you found Frigno's channel and you see the videos and like, oh, before and after. And it's like, okay, so he looked amazing, is what I'm understanding from you. And that motivated you to do what?
Yeah, he looked amazing. And then I was still kind of cynical and I was still in the brain fog at that time too, by the way. But I'm like, this guy's an outlier. He's crazy. You can't just eat meat. He's done it, but you can't do that. And then but I wanted to learn more because I understood how ketogenic diet works. I found Dr. Berry and I went down the rabbit hole. I probably watched 1,000 Dr. Berry videos. And my conclusion was, what is this guy selling? Where's the supplements? What kind of diet program do I have to pay for? And I couldn't find one. I'm like, literally, he's just giving this information away for free. He did a video about bacon too. And I'm like, he's saying it's okay to eat bacon? This is crazy. This is backwards from everything. Ultimately, the Dr. Berry video that convinced me was his reversing type 2 diabetes. I believe I was pre-diabetic. I was never diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but I have a lot of family members with type 2 diabetes. And in my mind, that is a chronic disease that they have for the rest of their life. They can't reverse that. I have family members like my entire life. I remember young to old, they've always been diabetic. Now they have the continuous glucose monitors. We go to the family reunions and they're constantly checking their numbers. But this is a life sentence for these people. And when I saw Dr. Berry's video on reversing type 2 diabetes, I'm like, you can't even do this. The video has like, I think it had 2 million views and it had 2,000 comments. And the comments were crazy. They were like, Dr. Berry, you saved my life. Dr. Berry, this 10-minute video did more for me than 10 years going to my family medicine doctor. And then there were all of these other comments about my A1C was this and now it's this. I'm like cured. I'm healed. I don't need insulin anymore. It's like completely reversed my type 2 diabetes. That was what ultimately convinced me was Dr. Berry in a type 2 diabetes video and the fact that this guy is all of my doctors in the past, I'm always judging what is their motivation? What is their bias? Why are they telling me this? Oh, they want to put me on a medication or pill. Dr. Barry, I'm looking at, what is his motivation? Like, I don't even have to buy anything. I can watch this video. I can go eat some meat. I can stop eating this horrible food and see what happens. So what I did was, I still wasn't convinced, by the way, but I said, I'm going to do an elimination diet for 30 days. The reason I wasn't convinced, and I apologize, I forgot to mention this earlier. Of all my health issues, about 7 years ago, I was at home. I went to stand up and I got very dizzy, and the side of my face went numb, and my fingers were tingling. I couldn't find my words. My wife panicked and she called 911. I went to the hospital. I had a TIA mini stroke, and I was in the hospital for about 5 days. Thankfully, a TIA is temporary, so I don't have any of permanent, like people would have with a stroke, side effects. But they're like, you're so young, you're in your 30s. Why are you having a mini stroke? So they did all these subsequent tests, and they diagnosed me with congestive heart failure. My ejection fraction was 44 before, and I've also had an irregular heartbeat my whole life. So I had all of these other issues. So when I was going to start carnivore, one of the reasons I was so scared was because of my heart. I've been told my whole life, you eat meat, you're going to clog your arteries, you're going to have a heart attack. I'm like, I have congestive heart failure. I can't just go eat meat like Dante because of this. And so watching Dr. Barry videos also led me to Dr. Philip Ovadia, heart surgeon, who's performed 4,000 heart surgeries, who's talking about doing this too. And yeah, so sorry, long story short, that was what ultimately convinced me. But I said this, I said, I'm not going to do this carnivore thing my whole life. I'm going to do an elimination diet for 30 days. I'm going to eliminate sugars, seed oils, processed garbage that humans were never intended to eat. And I think anybody could agree, like, we could do that. That's just an elimination diet. Ultimately, I was saying I'm going to only eat meat for 30 days because that's what I did. But rephrasing it as an elimination diet, eliminating those things, convinced me to do it for 30 days. And I told myself on day 31, I'm going back to keto. I'm going to add in some vegetables, some cauliflower and broccoli and things like that. That's what ultimately convinced me to do it. But like a weekend, I was feeling so incredible. My sleep started improving. I think probably like 10 days in, I'm like, I'm not stopping at 30 days. This is too good to quit, sort of thing.
What I love about what you just said is that in each of the scenarios, you got some information, you did some research. You got more information, you did some research.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like so many people will come to us and say it can't be healthy, and they'll give all these reasons that you just talked about, and my doctor told me this, my doctor, like, all the research says this research. But what's better information than do something and see what your body actually does? And I totally agree with you, because I did the same thing. It's like you find it and you're like, it can't be true, and you're just trying to disprove it.
Yeah.
And when you can't disprove it, it's like, well, then why not try? Because what I'm doing right now is hurting.
Yeah.
So I feel like the desperation we get to before we try the thing that looks insane, and we know it looks insane because it's against everything, and it works, leads to this other thing that happens where it's like, once it starts working, we want to tell everybody, which is why Dr. Barry had nothing to sell.
Yeah.
He lived the same thing and was like, you need to know this is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the answer. Why don't we have something to sell? Because the answer is the answer. Why should we gatekeep it?
Exactly. Yeah. Desperation or inspiration. That seems like the two motivators for people to start. And hopefully, most people won't wait for desperation. Thankfully, my desperation, that's what caused me to do it. I was desperate. I was hopeless. I was suffering so bad for so long. Uh, I hear people now, Violet, that say some people will never try this. You can't tell people, and I believe that. I can't tell anyone, you just do this. They have to be inspired or desperate in order to do it. Unfortunately, some people will wait until they're too desperate, that it becomes reversible. I've interviewed people with stage 4 cancer. I interviewed a man that lost his colon, that believes he would still have his colon right now if he found this years ago. So hopefully people don't wait until it's too long. But yeah, I'm with you. Desperation or inspiration, that's kind of the way. That's the reason we're doing the whole documentary, is just to inspire people. We're not telling anybody what to do. We're just putting stories out there. This is what happened for this person doing this. Do what you want with the information.
The documentary, first of all, we have to talk about it in a second, but just going back to the whole idea of the data is there. So when you were coming into this, and we hear some things like about cancer, and how do they find cancer in the body? Well, they give you radioactive what? Sugar.
Sugar.
But yet, they're telling you that sugar's fine to eat. And when you're a cancer patient, they're still saying sugar's fine to eat, just take this medication. I feel like there's so many things that if just a conversation and some logic talk,
Common
we
sense.
would see, yeah, some common sense, we would see that there's a break or a problem in the information that we're being given. And conversations like ours, I hope, are helping people to see that, yeah, if I know that we find cancer in the body by getting someone to drink a little bit of sugar, then drinking and eating sugar every day, and the reason, by the way, is because it's uptaking it, that's what it's fueling itself with.
Yeah,
Then obviously eating and drinking it every day when I'm a cancer patient can't be good for me. But we don't make the link because, well, the powers that be aren't helping us to make the link.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh man, the sugar cancer thing really gets me fired up. You're right. It's some of it's common sense. Otto Warburg was talking about this like 100 years ago, and then we went off in the wrong direction for so long. My friend Jeff DeProsperous has stage 4 cancer. He's carnivore, and we were never going to talk about cancer in our documentary until I heard his story. And again, talking about motivations, like Dr. Barry's motivation. Well, my thoughts on Jeff DeProsperous. I'm like, this guy's going through stage 4 cancer, and he wants to go on YouTube and talk about how carnivore has made his chemotherapy treatment so much more bearable, how he has so much more energy, how his immune system's so much stronger, how his mental health is improved. He's like, even if you don't believe the whole cancer sugar thing, which you should, but even if you don't, he's like, just the fact that my immune system's stronger, I feel like I'm 20, my sleep is improved, like my mood is better, all of those things. If you're going up against stage 4 cancer, logically speaking, those things would probably help you as well. Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of this stuff is just common sense. That's one of Jeff's biggest frustrations. He would go in for a chemotherapy treatment, and they come around with cookies and Ensure. They're giving cancer patients sugar. Like what? It's so backwards. It's almost criminal. It's like you're drowning, and instead of throwing them a life preserver, it's like here's a weight. Like it's just completely backwards.
It's frustrating because the people that are giving these things out, you think should know, because we're in a hospital scenario at that point, right? So these are nurses and people working with nurses and doctors and et cetera. So there's a part where we think they should know the answer. Okay, that's fine. But I feel like the other part that's really frustrating is that a lot of the times the family of these people are believing that they're in good hands. Part two is you find carnivore. Walk us through a little bit of how that changes things for you.
Yeah, so finding carnivore really changed my life forever. I was a couple weeks in when, like I said, well, right away the snoring stopped. Then the arthritis started going away. Then the depression, like 3 weeks or so in, really started lifting. And then I would have given anything before this just to have be normal when I was so depressed. I don't want to get too dark, but my depression was, I was really depressed for a long part of my life. I was completely hopeless. And only by the grace of God, I'm still here right now. It was a very, very dark place. So I would have given anything to be normal. I would see family members that they're just normal, right? And I'm the opposite. I realized on carnivore, probably around day 30 or 40 was when my mood really started lifting. I'm like, on the opposite end of the spectrum now. I'm not just normal. I'm like full of joy and gratitude. I'm happy. My default demeanor now, I'm smiling, I'm excited, I'm energetic. So it really changed everything for me. And this was the only thing, like I said earlier, that's helped with my mental health. All of these pills that I was on, they didn't help. Like maybe they prevented it from getting worse. I don't know. But they barely touched the depression. I would go on this medication, and they would say, Kerry, it's going to take 3 months before if we know if this works or not. And I'm like, I'm so depressed right now, and you want me to wait 3 months before I know if this works or not? And I would do it for 3 months, and it didn't work. And then they'd say, oh, it's okay. We'll just up the dosage now, but you got to try 3 more months. And I did it for another 3 months. We'll up the dosage. Oh, that pill doesn't work. Try another one. So I'd be on like one pill for a year, another one, another one. It never did anything. Carnivore has been absolutely amazing. And I've talked to so many people since then. So I decided I wanted to do a documentary. And the main motivation behind this whole documentary is not do carnivore diet. It's what carnivore diet has done for me for mental health, depression, anxiety. I've since interviewed some amazing individuals like Dr. Georgia Eid, change your diet, change your mind, and talk to so many just individuals that have done this themselves that have said the exact same thing as me. It's like 3 weeks, a month in, my depression started lifting. It's amazing where nothing else worked for them. So yeah, we decided to do this documentary where we follow people around over the course of a year doing a proper human diet. Initially, it was going to be all about carnivore, and I've also since realized it's not just that I'm doing carnivore. I believe what it is I've returned to what's natural for humans. We've escaped so far away from what is natural for humans, mainly in the foods we're eating, but also not getting sunshine, not exercising, looking at screens for 12 hours a day, things like that. I think as you look at our escape from what's natural as humans, we're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I think it's all related.
1 year on a medication trying to find the right level. If you can't find the right level, we'll do another year on a different medication. And we do that in cycle. Well, we do that with different medications, not in cycles, but with different medications. How many years would you say that you were searching for that? So when did you get diagnosed till, I guess, 500 days ago when you found carnivore? How long was that period of time?
I think 9 or 10 years that I was on different antidepressants and anxiety medicines and sleep medicines. And I think throughout that whole time, it was messing around with the dosages and let's try this. That didn't work. Okay, let's try this. And it made me feel different, but it never got rid of the depression. The best way I can describe it is it made me feel like a zombie, like I have no emotions, like whatever, I don't care, bad or good, I just don't care, sort of thing. I was just kind of like a zombie. And the biggest regret for me is my children. My wife and I have triplets plus one, and so my girls were very young, going through childhood, just seeing dad as a kind of emotionless zombie sitting out on the couch most of the time. And you when you're that depressed, you as much as you want to fake it, you cannot fake it. You can't, oh, I'm just happy and I'm fine. Everyone in the house knows dad's depressed again. It brings the whole house down, sort of thing. So, but yeah, for probably 10 years, I was on all these antidepressants.
I want to make sure that I highlight what you just said because that's blowing my brain right now, blowing my mind. You just said that 9 years about of medication, medication, medication. And yet, after 3 weeks, you started to feel different.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the month, you knew you were never going back.
Yeah.
And you have actually solved your depression in less than a year for sure, but I don't know how long it actually took. You haven't said yet. What doctors couldn't do with medication, you did with eating actual food defined as meat, fish, poultry, maybe some eggs.
Yeah.
That's real food. I want to make sure I highlight that you just said that because I
Yeah.
think that this is the part that gets missed. Everybody's looking at this way of eating as a diet. It's a way to heal our body and get back to health. And when we're back to health, our body will regulate its rate. That's what it does.
Yeah.
And you got both.
Yeah. It's like I won the lot. It's like I won the lottery. It's like when I first started doing this, uh, after 30 days, I felt incredible. I felt so good. I said this. I was going to do one video on YouTube, my 30-day update, and I said if I had a lottery ticket for $1 billion, I'd rip it up. And I stand by that statement. This is worth everything in the world to me, but mainly the depression, anxiety going away. Nothing else has ever touched it like this. And I don't know how you could get a better scenario. Like I said, 9, 10 years on every antidepressant medication, sleeping medication, anti-anxiety medication. Nothing ever even came close to touching my depression like eating a proper human diet has. And it was quick. It was so quick. I interviewed another individual, Todd Bachman, Carnivore Cure. He's got a great story too. He said he was depressed for 30 years. Within 3 weeks, gone, and he never looked back. And he's angry about it. He's mad. He's like 3 weeks after 30 years of suffering. So it was the same thing for me, for sure. Like I said, it's the reason I'm so passionate about this.
It's the highlight of what Georgia said in the book that you were held up earlier. Change your diet, change your mind. Is that it's what you take away that actually heals you. Is not adding things. And I feel like it's amazing because it was a YouTube video. Like you stumbled onto a YouTube video.
If not for YouTube, imagine this, Violet. I was thinking about this the other day. YouTube has its pros and it has a lot of cons, but this is one big pro because without YouTube, how would I have ever heard about carnivore unless I happen to be neighbors with Dante Ferrigno or one, but he found it too through YouTube. So it's definitely one of the big pros of YouTube, I think, for sure. Wouldn't have been able to read about this in the encyclopedia or at the library before.
And now you're making videos.
Yeah, I did that 30-day video. I've been doing YouTube for 8 or 9 years now. My wife and I have a homestead. We did videos here and there about our chickens and goats and running a homestead. So on 30 Days of Carnivore, I felt so incredible. I'm like, I'm going to do one video, just talk about this is nuts. Like, look at what's happened to me in 30 days. You could kind of see a transformation already in 30 days, but mental health as well. And I did that video and it really resonated with a lot of people. People are always like, you're so passionate, you're so excited. I'm like, if you came from the place I came from before, you would be passionate. And it's like I was in a prison and I'm fine, and I never thought I'd be free, and now I'm free. Of course, I'm excited about it. I was only going to do that one video, and then I did another one and another one, and I'm like, this is too important. My thing is, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but everybody should have this as a tool in their toolbox. If you're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, like my friend Jeff, I'm not saying you have to do carnivore, but the fact that people don't have this as a tool in their toolbox, it's never presented to them, is criminal to me, especially with the mental health issues we have in the world right now. Dr. Georgia Ede said there's over 1 billion people right now, 1 billion with the B, with mental health issues. And I'm seeing it younger and younger, like with my children and their peers and friends they go to school with. People need to have it as a tool in their toolbox. So I started doing more videos, and I think on day 67, I did a YouTube video, and that was when we were like, oh, we should just do a documentary about this because we're only reaching a small subset of people on YouTube. I found the ketogenic diet through Netflix, and there's a lot more people on Netflix or a whole different audience on Netflix that we could be reaching, or one of these big streaming services. So that was when we decided to do the documentary. Kind of foolishly, too, by the way. We'll just do a documentary. Why not? I've never done a documentary before this either, by the way. This is the first thing. So it's like that carnivore energy. I'm like, I can do anything now.
How many people do you have involved? Like, if this is the first time, I'm kind of curious. Like, how many people have you been able to get on board with what you're doing?
Oh, it's much bigger than me now, Violet. It is going crazy. It's like I'm in a movie or a dream. I don't even believe what's happening now. So far, we have filmed 27 individuals for the documentary. We filmed so many good doctors, Dr. Baker, Dr. Chafee, Dr. Barry. I got to meet him in person, which was like meeting my hero because I believe it saved my life finding his videos. It was so surreal meeting him in person and filming him for the documentary. We were just down in Austin and we filmed 14 individuals down there and a lot of the good doctors. Dr. Kiltz, absolutely amazing. Dr. Philip Ovadia, I filmed a month or two ago in Illinois. And we're going to be filming Dr. Ede, which is going to be a highlight for me because I told her, I'm like, this would have saved my life. Like 20 years ago, I cried when I read this book. I'm not ashamed to say it. This would have saved my life if I read this. I was giving her a hard time. I'm like, why couldn't you do this like 20 years ago? Come on. Or 15 years ago or whatever when I was depressed. So yeah, it's really taken off. We have a team of, I think we have 14 different volunteers that are helping behind the scenes because this is a huge thing. We're actually trying to get the documentary onto Angel Studios, which means it'll be on the big screen. Initially, it was like, let's get it on Netflix. Now we're trying to get on the big screen and then one of the big streaming services. And I believe we're going to do it. We have just some very incredible stories so far, including my friend Bill Knott, who is 700 pounds. He was stuck in his house in Alaska for 4 years, going on 5 years now. He hit 1 year just recently, and my daughter Emma and I and John were going to film him in like 2 weeks in Alaska, walking outside in Alaska. He's been stuck in his house for 5 years. He's down almost 250 pounds right now. It's just incredible. But like everyone else in this story, he overcame dark black hole depression. A couple of weeks in, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks in for him, he posted a video on his own YouTube channel, Bill Knott, talking about his depression going away.
That's amazing. That is like, again, it's crazy to know that people are stuck like that and like basically, like you said before, trapped inside their own body, and that food can make such a huge difference if we know the right information. So now we're going to the if we know the right information. Your documentary is about sharing what different people are doing and how what they did resulted in their different outcomes, which you said there's 27 different outcomes because everybody's different. And I want to talk about that. It's something we always hear when they're trying to say, but everybody's different, so you need veg. That's the end of that sentence usually. Everybody's different, so some people need veg. Now, again, Dr. Eid said it the best, I think, to me when she said, if you can only afford to buy one kind of food, you buy meat, fish, poultry. If that's all you can afford, that's what you buy. I'm just wondering if you were faced with someone who's saying, but some people need veg. How do you have that conversation with them?
Yeah, I have to work on that conversation because I tend to get kind of fired up on that one. But I've interviewed so many of these good doctors, and one of the things I've heard that I have since proven myself as a fact is we get everything we need from meat in the proper proportions. A fatty meat is the most nutritionally dense food we can eat. We could eat only that and thrive. You can't say the same for vegetables or plants. You will die. You have to supplement. And for 500 plus days now, I've done just that. And it's not that I'm still just barely eking by and I'm alive now. I'm absolutely thriving. My blood work, everything. I'm not deficient in anything. And I didn't have any plants or any fruit. The other thing I'll say real quick on the plants is I get a lot of people telling me, Kerry, you would have done the same thing if you just ate plants. And I actually almost did that prior. I've done so many diets over the years. Like we talked about keto for almost a year before doing carnivore. I did strict keto, but more plant based. I would have a salad for lunch, a salad for dinner. I would have riced cauliflower, asparagus, low carb vegetables. And I have a little bit of protein, maybe some chicken or something. Because remember, I can't eat the meat. It's going to clog my arteries. I can't eat red meat. That's too bad for me. I did that for like a year. I was still depressed. I still had horrible IBS. My stomach was always bubbling and gurgling and hurting me after meals. I still had arthritis in my foot. I could barely walk. So I believe it wasn't just, everyone says this to me, you would have done the same thing if you just eliminated junk food and sugar. That wasn't true for me. I believe that's a huge part of the equation. Eliminate junk food and sugar. If you can eat just vegetables, it's a million times better than standard American diet. But
today's video is brought to you by my keto consultations. You know how to do keto, but you're having trouble just sticking with it? Book a consultation with me and we're going to get you back on track. The link is in the description.
But for me, I really believe adding the fatty meat in was what was missing for me. And I've since learned getting that fatty meat, I think I was deficient in cholesterol, which is backwards from everything I've ever been told. Once I got that cholesterol in, my hormones balanced. My testosterone went up. My sleep improved. All of these things are related to our hormones. And I believe I was missing that fatty meat. I think that was one of the key parts. The last thing I'll say real quick too on plants, I recently filmed a video. It's not live yet, but talking about why I don't think I'll ever eat plants again. I think as society, for one reason or another, we hype these things up to be more than they are. Of course, eating plants and vegetables is a million times better than the standard American diet. But people saying you're going to die if you don't have a salad, I think is insane. And one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of salad and lettuce and plants anymore is there's tons of pesticides and glyphosate on this produce and on these plants. Dr. Berry, when I interviewed him, he said salad is basically crunchy water with glyphosate on it. There's like 14 calories in the lettuce. Most people don't like salad. They like the croutons, the cheese, and the dressing. The dressing is full of seed oils, which is like tank lubricants. It shouldn't be for human consumption. It's highly inflammatory. It's horrible for you. But people like the dressing. They like the cheese. Do you really like the lettuce? Then just eat a head of lettuce. And then what do you get out of that? 14 calories? It takes your digestive system more energy to process that 14 calories than you're even getting out of it. Like the calculation doesn't even make any sense. Besides all of that, I've also recently learned plants nowadays, like if you have an orange nowadays, for example, it has a fraction of the nutrients it would have had 50 years ago because our soils are so deficient now. It's like a dust bowl out there. We're scorching them with chemicals and fertilizers and glyphosate, and it's nothing like it used to be. So I get people saying that all the time too. Well, what about the Bible? The Bible says you can eat apples, you can eat this. Apple today is nothing like an apple back in the day. It's like it's glorified health food, but it's basically a big piece of candy, in my opinion. Like an apple today is so full of sugar. They've modified it so many times to be sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. If you're diabetic and you're eating an apple, it's like, good luck. It's going to raise your blood insulin level, and then you're going to be craving more and more sugar. So I have lots of arguments against fruits and vegetables. I do think getting rid of sugar and processed oils, we can all agree on it. If you're vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, I totally agree with it. But it wasn't the only thing for me. It wasn't until I added that fatty meat, raising my cholesterol, that my hormones balanced. I really started to feel better.
Okay, so going back to what you said about why we would possibly want vegetables, a lot of the time they're talking about we can get the same protein across the board. And I feel like that's another piece of the puzzle that I want us to just put out there for anyone listening to this, because you were getting the small amount of protein is what you said. Like you were keeping it small and you were mostly eating vegetation, which is unfortunately sometimes how we're brought into keto. I know I had a similar piece of information that, like, you need how many cups of salad and blah blah and all this stuff. The problem is, what I learned recently is that we can only get about 40% of the protein out of vegetation, 40 to 50%, depending on what kind of vegetable it is, that's bioavailable to us. And it doesn't even give us the full amount, like all the amino acids that we need. I
Right.
feel like that's the other piece of the puzzle, Kerry, that people don't know, is that they think that, well, I have my piece of meat and I have my salad or my vegetables or whatever, and I'm covered for the day. But whatever was coming from that, we need to cut that in half. And so now I'm under my protein, which, going back to, I think you said at the very beginning when you did keto, it did help you. You did start to feel better,
Yeah.
but it didn't last. And then you ended up chasing and all this stuff. And I think what we don't realize is that if my body sees that I need more, it's going to ask me to get more. And so, of course, it's going to push me to go get food because I'm only bringing in this much protein and this much veg. And my body's like, no, I want this much protein and
Yeah.
this. So if
Yeah, no, it's a great point. You're right. And your body will want you to get more, and your brain is so powerful, and then you're hungry all the time, and it's not natural. So, like I said, keto was great. It helped me a little bit, but when I think back to doing keto over the years, I would want to eat more and more. And it was so unnatural. And I'd have apps counting the carbs. How many carbs are in this one? Oh, can I just have a little bit more? Well, why did I want more and more and more? And now on carnivore, I have no apps. I don't think about anything. I eat a fatty piece of meat and I'm full. And if I'm hungry again, my body tells me I just eat a little bit more meat. But it's not this unnatural thing. It's the most natural thing in the world. And yeah, I think we're messing ourselves up. The other thing, too, the argument I get from people is, oh, a calorie is a calorie. It doesn't matter. It's like 1,000 calories of Oreos versus 1,000 calories of ribeyes is completely different. The Oreo has sugar in it. It's going to spike my insulin. The Oreo has soy in it. Maybe affect my hormones differently. It's completely different. And even when I was doing keto, low carb, I was still getting carbs. And sometimes I would get kicked out of ketosis. I may be getting kicked out of ketosis too on carnivore, but I feel like my body, and I've heard this from some of the good doctors. Dr. Phil Bovedi, a heart surgeon, told me the heart performs more efficiently while in ketosis. Babies are born into ketosis. I've heard other doctors say the brain performs more efficiently in ketosis. So it seems like the deeper into ketosis I am, the better I end up doing. And even if I'm doing keto, I may be pretty close to that, but I'm always kind of on the edge or seeming unnatural or kind of forced.
going back to the idea that everybody's different, because I do agree with that. I feel like the other reason that people are so, well, we have the camps, right? There's like the people that are in the keto camp that just they feel like we can do it this way and we shouldn't need to go to carnivore. And first thing I want to point out is that we need to acknowledge that carnivore is a subset of a ketogenic diet. So can we just acknowledge that? So if you're doing carnivore, you're doing keto, just like all the same. But I feel like the big piece of the puzzle there is that for the people who, like myself, were able to get all the way to amazing health on a keto diet and doing net, not even total. Like some of us are able to do it. That's fine. Like we have to acknowledge that some people have more damage than others because we see it on them. You clearly had a lot of damage. Your mind was not functioning well. So it makes sense to me that carnivore was what you needed. It makes sense to me that I had joint issues. Yeah, maybe, my body was able to do that. But I feel like the good thing about this documentary that you're doing, I hope, is that it's going to show people that there is a spectrum.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about you have to get all the way to carnivore, which I don't think is what the point is. It's about understanding what healthy food does and what garbage does, and knowing the difference. Because if I'm eating garbage and expecting my body to give me amazing health, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, the main spectrum, I guess, or the main thing that we're pushing is more towards returning to natural. And you can do that with a ketogenic diet. We have a woman in the documentary that had stage 4 cancer, and she did vegetarian keto diet. But she did really clean vegetables, really clean stuff, and that worked for her. So that's more what I'm advocating for. Not do keto, do carnivore, eat like me, but more just return to what is natural. And I guess the caveat there is some people say, okay, well, then I'll just go get vegetables. But a lot of the vegetables nowadays that are commercially available in the grocery store, in my opinion, are not natural. If you're eating those things, I've watched videos where they'll take like strawberries, for example, and they will juice them and they'll extract the juice out, and it's full of pesticides. These pesticides go into our gut. Serotonin is developed in the gut. So there's a lot of things where people are like, I'm just eating vegetables, I'm fine, but they're getting them from the grocery store. Glyphosate, forever chemicals, pesticides, things like that. So yeah, I'm more so advocating for returning to what is natural. And you can really fall off the wagon on keto, like we were talking about earlier with the keto snacks and stuff like that. Those are keto, but they're not natural. There's things that are carnivore that aren't natural either. My wife and I went on vacation. We went on a cruise. I ate strict carnivore. Couldn't have had better choices, but they used, unknowingly to me, they used seed oils on the meat. So that's carnivore. I'm eating only meat, but I'm getting seed oils in there. That's not natural. So really advocating more for return to what's natural. It's one thing I want to say too real quick is Dr. Chafee has said this before, and I love it. It's very interesting, humans' needs for variety. Like you go in the grocery store right now and you go in the ketchup aisle and there's 50 types of ketchup. You go in the beverage aisle, there's 1,000 different beverages. And he's like, most species of the millions of species on Earth, they eat like one thing and they're thriving. Like cows eat grass. They're fine. They don't have cancer rates and all these issues that humans have. A koala bear eats eucalyptus. It's like humans are the only ones with our big brains that have to have 25,000 different things we're eating. And it's really to our detriment. And I think a big part of it is just profits. It's like big food. It's like put another variety, put another flavor out. It's this one. And then tell people they got to eat all the colors of the rainbow and all the variety. But we end up getting sicker and sicker doing that.
I actually think it's even more sinister than that. Because what a lot of us don't think about, but this is where my mind goes. When I am eating really healthy and I'm doing my keto diet, but I'm keeping in these sweet tasting fruits and whatever, or even if I do carnivore, but I let myself have fruit every once in a while, that sweet taste keeps the door open for me wanting the cookie, and companies know that. They know that it doesn't matter where the sugar come from, it's still going to get that dopamine pathway going. And so if they can get you to have the side of fries or the whatever, you're going to overeat. They're fully aware of that. We're the ones who are not acknowledging that that's true, that it's the time that I had my cheat day that I ended up going 5 or 6 days crazy and had to pull myself back. And then 2 months from now, I do the same thing to myself again, because, well, we're supposed to be able to have fun with food, right? So I do think it's purposeful.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, there's literally people that's their only job is to make this food as addictive as possible. I used to get so mad about that, and then I'm like, I'm a grown man. I've figured it out now. I can just go forward. But what really keeps me passionate in doing this documentary is this next generation of kids. You're seeing teenagers with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes. This was never before seen. It's crazy. And the obesity rates and then mental health issues, getting kids hooked for what? Profit. So these companies can make more money. And then you get sick, and then it's more profit from these. And then you end up in the healthcare system going to the doctor, and the circle just keeps continuing and continuing. And it's unacceptable that is something that's happening to the most vulnerable in our society, the children and the elderly too. People that work their entire lives and they go to retire and they're miserable. That has been one big blessing of doing this documentary. I've talked to so many people in their 60s, 70s, 80s just thriving on carnivore, more than I would ever believe, or keto or proper human diet. But that's been one bonus, I guess, of doing this. I never would have thought people that were like 70 are like, all right, I'm going to change my lifelong diet and start doing this thing. But they're doing it and having just incredible results.
And also the fact that they're the vulnerable or the people who are seeking an answer. Because the other part of that story is that when you go to the nutritionist who was trained by the company that wants you to eat the wrong thing, that's saying, but you have to have fruit every single day and granola and all the things that cause you to chase. So there's always a way that they get to us. And it's important for us to be able to focus ourselves back on what are we actually trying to achieve. If good health is what you want, we need to eat for good health. So one of the things I want to ask you about is what have you found or done to make this sustainable for yourself moving forward? Like, what are the things that have really changed that you are confident? I can hear it in you that you're never going back. I want to know, like, what's making you that confident?
Yeah, well, I feel incredible. My biggest, it's a great question because a lot of people do this because they have a why, an immediate why. For me, it was depression, anxiety, but I also had weight and IBS and those other issues. And then so when people clear those things up, it's very tempting to go back to moderation. For me, I was so hopeless and so desperate before. I remember just praying to God, like, give me anything to fix this. Now that it's fixed, I don't want to go back to what was causing it before. But more so, my long term why has been realizing that I've cured all of these things for me right now, which is great, but I'm not worried about getting cancer or dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm not saying I'm not going to get it. I could, but I believe my odds of getting it are drastically reduced because most of those things are from having chronic inflammation. I have almost no inflammation anymore. I was chronically inflamed from the foods I was eating. And if I do get one of those things, my immune system is so much stronger I can deal with it. Beyond all of that, my mood and my spirit and my carnivore zen energy, for lack of a better word, it's like bring it on. Like I can deal with anything now, where before I would have been worried about things like that. In terms of sustaining it, it's just been finding foods that I enjoy. Really, a big thing that changed for me was, I guess, I just said finding foods that I enjoy, but I don't eat for pleasure anymore. It used to be more of an addiction. My body saying, oh, more sugar, more this, more that. Now it's just an appreciation. I love eating a big fatty ribeye, but I'm not craving it like I used to for sugar. And finding things that I enjoy that are easy it's just been on autopilot. I just recently hit 500 days. I love having a big power bowl for breakfast, which is just scrambled eggs with ground beef and bacon and a little bit of butter on top of it. I eat that and I feel energetic. So finding some regular meals that are easy to do kind of ongoing has helped me. But really that long-term why, my wife and I had a big conversation. She's carnivore with me now too, about growing old together and actually living as opposed to growing old with mobility issues and arthritis and doctor's visits and just riding it out on the couch until I die is really kind of my big motivation going forward.
Your wife is doing it with you now too. How long has she been doing carnivore?
She's just about at 150 days. She started a long time ago. She was vegetarian for most of her life, mostly vegetarian, probably 95% vegetarian. So she started early on in my carnivore journey, and she's very stubborn. She didn't listen to my advice. She jumped right in, going from vegetarian to carnivore. And my advice to her was take some baby steps, do keto for a while, have some vegetables, and ease your way into it. And she ended up getting keto flu really bad, and she ended up quitting and then going back to keto. She's since did baby steps. She's doing wonderful on carnivore now. She's been 150 days strict carnivore, and she's lost some weight, but her mood has improved drastically. She had inflammation in her legs since she had our triplets 17 years ago. She's always suffered with like edema problems like that have all cleared up. So it's been so much nicer too, just being on board, making a meal for the whole family. Most of my family's carnivore right now. One of my daughters is ketovore carnivore, but having the whole family on board has been amazing.
I feel like that's another thing that gets a lot of people is we want, like, when we find the answer, we want results yesterday. And so we jump in and we try to do too much and even like do many multiple things. And I feel like it's good that, well, it's unfortunate that it sounded like it made a problem. But I feel like sometimes we need that mistake to help us understand why doing it slowly is so important. So the flip side of the coin, like I'm happy that I had withdrawal. Like I credit that to why I didn't go back, because having withdrawal solidified for me I was addicted to sugar. And had I not had withdrawal, I know a lot of people didn't have it. They go back. And it's like, why you but again, so I feel like sometimes it's good for people to have that moment so that when they go back in, they see it as precious what you just accomplished.
Yeah, it's not a mistake. It's more of a lesson.
It's a huge lesson. So were there any setbacks? Were there any, because carnivore seems so simple. I think a lot of people feel like once you get in, there it's smooth sail. Were there setbacks? Did you live anything that you're just like, oof, wasn't expecting that?
Thankfully for me, no, but I might be a little bit unusual. I guess the first couple of weeks are tough. Um, Getting over that sugar craving can be really hard for people. I had some cravings and struggled during that time. You can end up in the bathroom quite a bit the first couple of weeks. When that happened for me too. Maybe not as bad for some other people, probably because I did keto on and off before. But for me, I'm like, for 42 years, I just put toxins and garbage and the wrong ingredients, the wrong fuel in the tank. So if I got to suffer for a little bit, I'm just going to suck it up and deal with it. I always tell people, realize if you're starting this and you're suffering the first week or two, it is temporary and it will go away. And then those sugar cravings will go away and you'll feel so much better. So don't think it's going to be like that forever. The only negative I can think of 500 plus days on carnivore is finding good balance afterwards. It's almost like you get this superhuman ability and you want to go full force with it to I really lost balance for a while, like just talking about carnivore, doing carnivore videos. Oh, we're going to do a documentary now, flying all over, filming people. I have since reeled that in more, having good balance with my family and family time and keeping everything that's important balanced out. But I talk to a lot of carnivores that have that issue as well, where it's like you get a second chance at life, and you want to make up for lost time. You try to do too much too quick. That's probably the only negative for me on carnivore.
I saw you did a video where you were like doing pull-ups out in like in the field there, and I'm wondering like, are you still doing that kind of stuff? Like, are you still finding that there's a huge drive to want to improve physical strength and that kind of stuff?
I am, yeah. It's so interesting because I've never exercised my life and my whole life, and I didn't exercise to lose any of this weight. And I remember hearing from people over the years or on the news or whatever, oh, you're heavy, you want to lose weight, just go exercise. And that is misinformation. That is so wrong. I didn't lose a pound by exercising. And like telling someone that's overweight to exercise to lose weight. For me, that's like telling someone that has pneumonia, oh, just go exercise, your pneumonia will go away. You can't, you're sick. Like I was inflamed, I had brain fog, I could barely stand up, I had IBS, I had stomach issues, I was too sick. But it was so interesting for me on carnivore. Once I started losing the weight, the energy came into I wanted to exercise. Like I have this excess energy where my body's like asking me to do it. It's the weirdest thing, but I've heard the same thing from other people. So I still do that regularly. My wife and I started a free Facebook group called Return to Natural. And every morning we try to get out and I get my feet in the grass, grounding, which I thought was insane before. I don't know the science behind it. I just know I feel way better when my feet are in the grass in the morning. And I get natural sunlight in my eyes first thing, not a cell phone light or the bathroom light or anything like that. They say it resets your circadian rhythm. I feel so much better doing that. And a big part of our return to natural is exercising every day. So for the last 30 days, we're doing this challenge where we're trying to at least exercise for 30 minutes a day and try to do it natural, like walking or whatever we would kind of normally be doing. But I still do the pull ups a lot too when I can.
I saw that video and I was like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think I did any, well, no, I know I didn't do any exercise to lose the weight, but I feel like the pressure we feel to be running and jogging and whatever. And it's just cool because what you chose was what was interesting to you. You wanted to see if you could do them and then you started doing them. And I thought that's cool. And it matches with I think most people. Like I like riding things. So that's what I do. And it's like, why would you not do the thing that looks fun?
Exactly. Yeah. It always, not to take it negative, but I've seen this a couple times lately. When you see someone jogging and they're overweight, I think of my former self and I feel so bad for them because I don't want to judge them, but I have a feeling they're jogging, they're exercising. If that was me doing that, I would go home and be like, oh, now I deserve some Doritos or some ice cream or something because I exercised today. And you can't outrun, you can't outwork, you can't out exercise a bad diet. I never realized that before starting this. I always thought exercise was a huge component of it. I'm just too lazy to do it kind of.
That makes me sad that we tell ourselves that story that is I'm too lazy, I'm too this. I'm not that the world has fed me this lie that's keeping me stuck. Like I'm the problem, and that's the part that drives me nuts. And
Yeah.
why I made my channel is because you're not the problem. The world is lying to us.
Yeah.
No, the world's not lying to us. Companies are lying to us because it makes them money.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
I'm wondering to myself when you go out with people, because not everyone in your world is keto or carnivore. Do you feel social pressure to how do you manage the social pressure? Like how does that work for you guys?
I've been talking about carnivore so much. I think if I go out with friends or family, they have a conversation between themselves like, "Don't mention carnivore. Don't say anything. This guy won't shut up about it." Um,
Okay.
but seriously, I have had some, especially when I first started. We had like a family reunion, and there was pressure. People are like, "Oh, it's just you can have a cupcake. What's one? It's not going to hurt you," kind of thing. Or other people just being very judgmental. Why are you just eat a balanced diet? Why can't just moderate? Just eat moderation. It frustrates me when I see my daughters are doing this with me, and people are doing it to them too, like adults. I don't think people are mean spirited. I think subconsciously they know they're doing something wrong that's not working. And maybe subconsciously it encourages them to do that. But that's a weird sort of thing. People encouraging someone, because if you were trying to quit alcohol or smoking cigarettes, you wouldn't encourage that person. Oh, come on, just have, you might if you're also an alcoholic, but most friends and family would, they'd be like, oh, good, Kerry quit alcohol. I'm not going to encourage him to do that. But it's really weird with sugar and the standard American diet. You're trying when someone's trying to quit that, people still encourage you to do it. It's yeah, it's frustrating.
And it's interesting that they talk about the cupcake. That's the part that's interesting. It's not like they're saying, well, you could have some carrots, right? But they're saying, no, you could have a cupcake, right? And I feel like that's the part for me that was, I think, the funniest of it is that we're so focused on the fact that the person doesn't get a treat. Like, who cares?
Yeah, and now I'm like so extreme on the other side. Maybe I'm too extreme, but I'm like, how is that not an addiction? I was addicted to the sugar. They're addicted to the sugar, and that's all they can think about is the treat and the cupcake. And now when we go to like family reunions, we just went to a birthday party, and oh my goodness, these people they're eating cupcakes and sugar and candy and all this junk food, and every single one of them is like, oh, my shoulder's all inflamed. It hurts. My back hurts. I got a headache. Oh, I got to go take a nap. And I'm like, you're eating this highly inflammatory foods in huge amounts of it, and then you're surprised that your body is highly inflamed and you don't feel well. But again, they're in the brain fog. I was there. I used to do the same thing, so they don't get it. But it is interesting our perspective and how we see things now that we kind of see things more clearly.
And it's hard to not be able to help them
Yeah.
because like we've said what we could say. They see what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's not much more we can actually do. And
Right.
it's hard sometimes, especially when it's family, that we want them to be with us.
Yeah. Well, I even have people now. They'll say this. This is the comment that drives me insane. Well, that's great. You did all that, but uh, I get comments on my YouTube channel. I had a family member say something similar. You're a ticking time bomb. That's great that it's working now, but any day now, I'm going to just suffer a massive heart attack, which is just insane to me because I think I mentioned this to you briefly before, but the craziest thing that happened to me on carnivore is I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. My ejection fraction was 44. That means my heart can't keep up with the needs of my body. I was told this is chronic. This is never going to get better. At best, you can keep it the same if you start exercising and eating better. But they said it would never get better. I had an echo done on my heart just a couple months ago. My congestive heart failure completely reversed. My ejection fraction 60 now. It's perfectly normal, which is completely unheard of. Like even other doctors are like, you don't normally reverse congestive heart failure. And I've had a lifelong irregular heartbeat since birth that reversed on carnivore. My heartbeat's normal. It's like unbelievable. All of this stuff, just so your audience knows, it's in my medical records. I've shared it on my YouTube channels. I'll share it with anybody because it's so unbelievable. I wouldn't believe it. Like this guy reversed his lifelong irregular heartbeat. And I talked to Dr. Ovedi about it. And he's like, well, the heart performs much more efficiently in ketosis. You also lost a bunch of weight, so that's going to contribute to it as well. It's just crazy to me. So when people say I'm a ticking time bomb, literally every marker, including congestive heart failure reversed, irregular heartbeat reversed, the 5 markers for metabolic health, I've like fixed all of those for myself. But yeah, my heart's gonna explode at any moment now. Even though I could get up and run a marathon right now, and I could barely stand up before. It's just so backwards.
I also find it interesting that the information that doctors will say where it's chronic and it's this, it completely ignores what we're eating, first of all,
Yeah.
but it also ignores the fact that while we're living, our body is rebuilding itself. And some of these same cells that they're talking about have trajectories between weeks and months of replacing themselves, why wouldn't it get better if I eat better?
Right?
And
Yeah.
it's like if I give it the correct proteins and lipids to rebuild itself, like we think our body is going to focus on making our hair shiny versus fixing our heart. Like our body is smarter than that.
It's so smart. It's going to prioritize the healing I have seen just returning to a proper human diet is absolutely unbelievable. And if I didn't see these medical records, I wouldn't believe it. This one woman we filmed, Mimi, she had Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, and a full blown stroke. She could barely walk 10 steps. She's about to hike a 500-mile hike, the St. Francis of Assisi Trail. She is like a completely different, it's like her whole body regenerated. She's like a completely different human, just full of energy and gratitude. I've looked at all of her medical records. She was full blown diagnosed with Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, stroke. She had a blood infection that nearly killed her. And it's like one of the things she said, a person said that we interviewed her, was like, when you just get out of the way and put the proper fuel in your body, it's absolutely incredible what your body will do. I've seen it over and over and over again. It's just unbelievable.
And we do get in our way because we have messages that say, but you can have something fun once in a while.
Yeah.
And we believe it. So the other thing I hope people are getting from this is, what is your actual goal? And it sounds like your actual goal is to keep healthy, mental and physical. It's
Yeah.
mine for sure. And I want it to be everybody's.
Yeah.
Tell me more
Well,
about the documentary. When do you think it will be available?
yeah, we're hoping middle of next year. Uh, I get that question a lot, and people are like, "We want it already. We want it already." Well, we're filming some individuals over the course of a year, and these individuals haven't even hit a year yet. Bill just hit a year. We also filmed Jeff DeProsperous. He doesn't hit a year until November. Um, so we're hoping for next year to have it out. And besides the individuals, it's going to have incredible individual stories of people doing a proper human diet for the course of a year. There's also several individuals that have already done it. We're not following them for a year, but they documented it very well. So we can see that. And then all of these good doctors are in the documentary as well. I think people are going to be really excited once they see it. I'm not patting myself on the back at all. It's all of these stories. Some of these stories are so powerful. One of the things I'm really proud about is most of the documentaries that you watch nowadays, almost all of them, sadly have some sort of bias. You look at like some of the Blue Zone documentaries on Netflix, they're sponsored by Beyond Meat. There's a corporation paying for these, and therefore the message is biased. Our documentary is completely crowdfunded. We haven't taken any money from any companies or corporations. Nobody's telling us what to do. It's all individuals. And almost everyone that's contributed are people that have done a keto or carnivore diet, and they're fired up about it. They want other people to know about it for good reasons. So I'm really excited about that. And the last thing I'll say is the people that are in this documentary, there's such an emotional connection. It's going to be an emotional documentary, I guess I'll say that. But there's a lot on the line. Like Bill Knott, 700 pounds, stuck in his house for 4 years. When you see him at the beginning of the movie, how are you going to not want to watch and see, does he get out at the end? Does this work? What sort of roadblocks did he have along the way? So there's a lot of movies and documentaries out there right now, documentaries in particular, that they just focus so much on the science. And the science is important, but people don't have the attention span and they get bored and then they're not engaged. Our documentary has the science. We have all of these good doctors in there, but the real focus is the individuals and having a good emotional connection with them and wanting to kind of see their story through. So
I'm excited to see it. I'm definitely on the edge of my seat because I feel like, and I have checked out Bill's channel, and it already we're seeing that his attitude, everything is different. So I'm excited for this to come out. Kerry, you want to let people know where they can reach you, and like, obviously, we're waiting on the documentary. Is there anything else that you want them to know about?
yeah, the last thing I'll mention is the documentary. It's become my purpose in life. It's my goal. It's my mission. I'm not going to stop till we reach millions of people, but it's actually gone beyond the documentary. We have so many stories now that the documentary would end up being like 6 hours long to do justice. So we're doing a documentary and then we're doing a subsequent series afterwards where we'll have a whole episode just about cancer. We'll have Professor Seafried in it, who we've already filmed, Jeff DeProsperous, a couple of individuals that have already had cancer. We'll have an episode all on type 2 diabetes. We're going to do that. And then we're also going to have, beyond that, kind of a third thing, the individual stories. So a whole episode on Jeff DeProsperous, a whole episode on Bill Knott, a whole episode on Maggie, who everyone's interested to see. Maggie is 83 years old. She's been carnivore for 65 years. She's incredible. Her story, we filmed her for about a week. So if you're interested in sharing your story for any of those three, it may not end up in the documentary, but maybe it ends up in one of the other ones. You can visit healinghumanity.movie. If you're interested in supporting the documentary, it's entirely crowdfunded. We're still trying to raise funds because it's incredibly expensive to film a documentary that you want to get on the big screen. Most movies on the big screen are millions and millions of dollars. We're doing it for a fraction of that, and I think it's going to be better than a lot of those out there. Just due to some of these stories are just so inspiring, and people are being very brave on sharing their stories. So if you're interested in sharing your story or donating, you can visit donate.healinghumanity.movie. And if you want to hear more of my carnivore stuff, my YouTube channel is Homestead How. I should probably change the name because I don't talk about homesteading anymore. My passion is all proper human diet now, but I have lots of videos about my story, my daughter Emma's story, and others that I've interviewed on my channel.
I'm definitely going to be checking out all those things. Wellness Warriors, if this video has encouraged you to start something new and get your health under control, there's a video on the screen right here that you can click on. Click on the link. I'm going to meet you over there.